starters, welcome back to class. My name is Antonella and today we're going to be learning something new in English. In this particular class, we are starting with Unit 3 and that means that you can already use certain expressions and certain aspects of English. For example, you know how to use demonstrative pronouns, you know how to use possessive adjectives, you know how to use simple expressions for greetings. Also, you know how to use specific vocabulary for objects and some adjectives. In this class, we're going to be learning some new grammar that is essential for communication in English, not only today, but for more advanced levels. Let's get started. I want you to look at these 6 pictures and try to identify what all of them have in common. I'm going to give you a few seconds for that. What all those pictures have in common is that they are showing people doing exercise, they are taking breakfast, they are doing their skincare, they are working. So these people are doing their habits, or routines or activities that they do regularly. So the tense we use for expressing those actions is a simple present or present simple. You can use both names. So let's start by describing what is a habitual action. These are activities that happen frequently or often. We usually add adverbs of frequency, for example, never, always, sometimes, often, and also expressions of time. For example, in the morning, at night, in the afternoon, on Sundays, every day, every 2 weeks, etc. You have many. If I want to use adverbs of frequency, I would say, for example, they sometimes eat breakfast at 6 a.m. So, sometimes goes before it. However, and this is something that you need to be careful about, if the present simple is using the verb to be, you know this, for example, is, or are, and also I want to use an adverb of frequency, that adverb of frequency doesn't go before, it goes after. So, I would say, I am always happy, or you are never angry, for example. Okay, let's go with the second use of the present simple. The second use for the present simple is to talk about general truths or facts. These are activities or actions that are quite permanent, and we can express likes, dislikes, we can talk about our job, and also it is highly connected with actions that belong to natural events. For example, water boils at 100 Celsius degrees. Here and in China and in the USA, water boils at 100 degrees. It doesn't change. So this action, I'm going to express it with the present simple. Another example is the earth revolves around the sun. The earth revolves around the sun. That is a fact. That is a natural event and it is like that. It is like proved. Let's go with the example. It says, he loves ham sandwiches. That's his like. That's what he likes. So, if I want to say that I like another thing, I'm going to use the present simple. The same with the things I don't like. So, that's why we use it to express likes and dislikes. Let's go with the third use of the present simple. So, although this is the present simple, it also is very useful to talk about the future. The future? Yes, the future. So, not any future, not the unpredictable future, but for activities that are in a timetable or on a schedule. That means if you look at a calendar or a timetable and it says, for example, that you have a class on Monday regularly, you say, we have classes on Monday, or next Monday we have class. That is the present simple. So we use the present simple to talk about regular actions or habits, routines, and some scheduled future. So some expressions that we use to talk about the future with the present simple are times, for example, at 9 o'clock or at 7 a.m. or every 10 minutes, because these are something that happens regularly too. Also, we say specific dates, for example, on Mondays or on Sundays, or next Sunday, for example, and also to talk about perhaps activities that happen one time, so we say once. Okay, now we are going to be looking at some specific feature that the present simple has and perhaps is different to other things that we have seen up to this moment. Before we move on to another thing, I need you to understand that the present simple tense is versatile and it's used in everyday language. So, it is a very simple time tense, although you still don't see it. It is a simple time tense that it's essential for communication in English. So it's important that we identify features, identify differences, try to spot what's difficult for us, and try to practice as much as possible so that we can master it and move on to other tenses. Alright, now we are ready to see some specific characteristics and things that we need to take into account at the moment of making sentences with the present simple. Up to this moment, you can identify the pronouns in English, that is, I, he, she, and it, you, we, and they. So up to now, we have been using the verb to be, saying that I am, you, we, they are, and he, she, it is. That's perfectly fine. Now, in the rest of the verse, in the present simple, there are some other changes too. We have some short texts for these two different groups. Let's look at the differences. For the first group, that is I, you, we, and they, it goes. When you arrive at school, you prepare your lessons for the day, you teach English and science. But let's look at the changes in the second text for the second group. For he, she, and it, the text goes. When she arrives at school, she prepares her lessons for the day, she teaches English and science. Can you see the difference? In the first verb, arrive, in the first group, nothing changes, but in the second group, we have added an extra S. In the first group, the verb prepare looks normal, but in the second text, it says prepares. For the third verb, teach, in the first group, everything is perfectly normal up to now, but in the second text, we have added something extra. So, for he, she, and it, verbs are going to change in the present simple, and it's very important that we know why that happens and how to change the verbs on our own. So we're going to go over a group of verbs. We're going to identify why that happens and how we can add that S. For he, she, and it, in the present simple, the verbs are going to be modified. These verbs are going to be added one S, ES, or AES. These are suffixes in English. But how do I know if I have to add an S or if I have to add ES or AES? Well, let's try to identify that and learn how to do it on your own. Firstly, let's look at the verb take. Take takes just an S, and this will happen in most verbs. That means in the majority of verbs, this will be the rule. However, in verbs like watch, we don't add an S but an ES. Why does it happen? Well, because in the verbs like watch that end in TZH, CH, SH, double S, O or X, we add ES. And here you have other examples like watches. For go, it changes to goes. Fix changes into fixes, and wash changes into washes. Now, let's look at two other verbs that look very similar but actually aren't. Firstly, let's analyze the verb study. Study ends in a Y. This is a letter Y. But the Y is removed and we have added IES. Why? Because this verb ends in a consonant plus Y. The consonant is D and this is the Y. So that is the reason why we add IES. Play looks very similar to study, but actually it is not the same. If we see how play changes in the present simple, we see that Y is kept, is still there, and we only add an S. Why does it happen? Well, because play has a vowel, this is a vowel, A is a vowel, and then it has a Y. So the Y is kept and we just add an S. These two verbs, study and play, can be confusing for students. So you need to be very careful to what letters that word has. Now, let's look at some exceptions to these rules. Let's start with one verb that you know and very well. That is the verb to be. The verb to be, to the verb to be, we don't add an S, we don't add ES, and we don't add IES. But this verb is completely modified. So in the present simple, the verb to be is am, is, or are, depending on the pronouns. Let's look now at the second exception that we need to pay attention to in the present simple tense. And that second verb is the verb have. To have, we don't add an S, we don't add ES, and we don't add IES. But what we do is to remove these two last letters, V and E, and we add an S there. So this can be confusing and tricky for you students because sometimes you end up adding an S here and saying haves. But no, we take out B and V and E and we add an S. So for he, she, and it, the verb have is now the verb has. So to sum up everything we learned about verbs in the present simple, here you can see a table where you have the same examples and the explanations on why these verbs change for he, she, and it only. Also, you have the exceptions here. So, it is very important that you practice and have this into account at the moment of making sentences and at the moment of speaking too. Okay, this was part 1 of Unit 3. Now, it is time to practice and try to review all the theory that you have on the booklet starting on page 20. Remember that if you have any questions, you can contact me via WhatsApp or email. Now, see you on the next video and good luck, everyone.